All right,
Yeah,
welcome back, everybody. Welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Megan Rochester, hosting your NFL Draft. We're covering the over and unders on totals for the NFL season coming up. And right now I'm being joined with Dave Golikoff. Go ahead and say hi, Dave, so that you can see your face.
Hi, Mom.
And then there's Jordan Sharp.
Yo, what's up, everybody?
And then we have got Mr. Peter Loshak.
Hi. Hello.
All right, guys, so the NFL Draft just ended, and I've got to say, Atlanta came out on top. My Falcons, they came out on top. I think that's what happened. I think they won the draft. Actually, overall, I feel like they've kind of been winning the entire preseason and postseason. They hired an excellent coach in Dan Quinn, and now they picked up some great players in the draft. What do you guys think about the Falcons this season?
Whoa. I'm sorry. I just had to say I'm getting like about a 15-second echo there.
Really?
Yeah, like when you just finished what you just said about Falcons, I heard Peter Loshak say hi. Like that's how long the lag is. But that's okay.
We talked about Dan Quinn. He's their head coach now, so obviously we knew they were going to pick up some excellent defensive linemen, defensive tackles, all in the draft. We got Vic Beasley picked up as well, who's going to be an excellent pass rusher, and he got picked up in the draft. I think they won this draft, the Falcons. What do you guys think?
I think the Falcons definitely had a good draft addressing needs. If I'm looking at the Falcons, I think that their offense is pretty good for the most part. They definitely need the offensive line to stay healthy and protect a little better, but the defense needed the help. They got Vic Beasley, they got Jalen Collins, and then, of course, the other area is the running game. I think just removing Steven Jackson from the equation helps, but Tevin Coleman, some fresh young legs, a guy who can maybe hit some home runs for them. So the Falcons really came in, addressed the two needs, and when you add it all in with the off season now, Quinn's going to come in. He's got some new bodies on defense, got some young athletic playmakers. If Matt Ryan can stay healthy and upright, I think the Falcons could be a team on the rise, and in my opinion, the best team in that division.
All right, now.
No, I was just going to say, so you would bet the over 8 at minus 135? Because I'm thinking that, I don't know, I mean, Vic Beasley, look, he's got a huge upside, obviously, but he can get injured. It's not clear if how much of the game he's going to play, how many snaps he's going to play, or how durable he'll be. I know everyone's super high on the Falcons, and obviously they'll be improved, but I'm not sure I'd want to bet over 8 wins at minus 135. To be perfectly honest.
I'll just tell you this. Who knows with Vic Beasley? Who knows with a lot of these rookies, right? But I do like Adrian Claiborne, decent pickup. Justin Durant, decent pickup. Brooks Reed, decent pickup. O'Brien Schofield, that's a guy from Seattle that Dan Quinn's going to know. And Quinn, just by being there, should coach up this defense. So when you're looking at this Falcons team, easy division. I think they could at least split with all 4 teams, or split with 3 of the teams, maybe even sweep Tampa Bay. I mean, you're already halfway there. Then you look at the passing game. I think the passing game, of all the aspects in the division, I think that passing game is the one elite area of any team in that division. That's my opinion. So if the defense is a little better, they can run the ball, I think they can definitely go over the number.
All right, I hear you. So you're basing it more on Quinn than the draft.
Quinn, yes. The offseason,
right.
Reed's a decent player. Durant's a decent player. If Beasley, if they hit on either Beasley or Collins, I think the defense could be much better.
I'll break the tie here for you. I'm with Dave. I think I really like the Falcons here. If they can weather the storm early in the season with some of the tougher games that they have to start the year, after their bye weeks, absolutely easy, I think, compared to the first half of their schedule. And back to the draft, I mean, if you look at the Falcons' needs coming into this draft, they addressed every single one of them in the first 3 picks, I think, with Vic Beasley, Jalen Collins, and Tevin Coleman. They needed a pass rusher, they needed another corner, and they needed a guy who could go in the backfield as well. So I think that we were really high. I thought we were pretty high on the Falcons before in our schedule release call. Like Dave said, their division is cake. I mean, I think the Panthers you're going to see regress. I think you're going to see the Saints still probably be all right, but beatable. And I think obviously the Bucs probably will have some struggles, if not a lot of struggles this year. So yeah, I mean, I like what they've done. I think I would agree with you both, though. It's definitely more about the coaching and the free agent pickups than it was about the draft. But I think the draft just solidifies it for me. I like the over with them.
All right, fair enough.
All right, so on the subject of Georgia, let's talk about Todd Gurley. He went to the St. Louis Rams in the draft, which he's an excellent, excellent player, but he's also dealing with a lot of ACL issues, and I know he's going to be a critical, critical player to their bench. Then you've got, let's see, Robert Havenstein, who had the worst bench press in the entire combine. I'm not really sure they picked up a lot of great players in the draft other than Gurley, and we're not really sure that Gurley's going to do that great, especially towards the beginning of the season while he's dealing with this injury. So what do you guys think about the St. Louis Rams?
I would say that it's that you hit on all the uncertainties. I mean, they did draft a lot of guys to shore up their biggest weakness, which was the offensive line. The question is, how effective will those guys be? I mean, there's a chance that those guys will be superheroes in the early going, and that Gurley will be great. I mean, his upside, I think, is potentially as big as A.J. Peterson. So, I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams won like their first 4 or 5 games or whatever, but it also wouldn't be surprising if they fell flat and needed a year or two to get together. So to me, it's a pass just because of the unknowns.
Well, I can go ahead, and you guys can probably rip me for saying some of these things.
Sure.
I actually brought alcohol to say that I've been drinking, because I always say in case I've been drinking. Well, now there's Patron on the table. So it will explain some of these wild comments. But I think the Rams did, as I think their draft will have more impact on their regular season win total than anybody else. And I'll tell you why. I think that this team, it's exactly as Peter said. I don't think one team in the entire draft focused more on one area of weakness than the Rams. They just said, fuck it. Like, we are going to run the ball come hell or high water. They drafted offensive linemen. They drafted Gurley. Don't forget they had Trey Mason last year. This team, Jeff Fisher, he's like, okay, we can play defense. If we can run the ball, we're going to be competitive. And I think that's really the key to the Rams here. They got Gurley, who could be, as Peter mentioned, the next Adrian Peterson, Eddie George. We've heard so many comparisons. There's not a lot of rookies in general that can come in and have an explosive impact, become Pro Bowl level. I think Gurley is one of them, and he's in a pretty good situation because the Rams are willing to force the ball down every team's throat. So if it works, I think the Rams have made a bigger impact on the win total than any other team.
Dave is preaching to the choir because I think anybody who is trashing what the Rams did in the draft just doesn't know Jeff Fisher. Like this draft for the Rams was so Jeff Fisher. Like we obviously know what he's trying to do. And look, the team in that division that just happened to have gone to the Super Bowl now twice in a row and won one of them has a lot of success by playing defense and running the crap out of the football. He looks at that formula and says, my defense is pretty good. I have an outstanding young running back in Trey Mason. I just picked up another one in Todd Gurley, who, like you guys said, and this is the only thing I think I'll disagree with you, Dave, is I don't think Gurley's going to have as much impact in year 1 as he does in years 2, 3, and 4, because we've seen from these rookies that are coming off the ACL injuries in college that their year 1s aren't necessarily as good. So I don't know if I'm going to go as far as to say that Gurley was an outstanding pick there, because obviously you're going with the high-risk, high-reward type of pick there. But, I mean, if he pans out and he can even come in and give you at least, 80% of what his talent level is, this year, the Rams are going to be an outstanding bet, I think, this year in the season win total. I don't trash what the Rams did in the draft at all. Picking up all those O-linemen and picking up a talent like Gurley to go with Fisher's game plan, I mean, absolutely outstanding draft for the St. Louis Rams.
I think they're a year away, but I would definitely I'll definitely be monitoring them game by game. If they start to show signs they're ready this year, like the Houston Astros are right now, then definitely I would look to bet the Rams as an underdog for sure in the early going and middle going.
I agree. I think it's tough to bet the over 8 wins now.
That's a pretty healthy total.
Given who's in the division too, I think we're all high on Arizona, and Seattle's going to be pretty good. And San Francisco, of course, a wild card, but week to week, I think this is a team that's going to be underrated, at least to start the year, so look for some of their early spreads.
For sure. Yeah.
All right, now something I'm really excited to talk about with you guys as well is because in our schedule video, we were talking about the Green Bay Packers, and I can't remember who it was, but you guys were saying that that line was going to move. It was going to go up. You guys talked about how they were a team on the rise. They were really going to shock people this season, and I think the odds makers are agreeing with you guys. It was by far the biggest movement on the lines we saw after the draft. They went up plus 1.5. Now they're sitting at 11 wins total, and the only team with them up at that number is the Seahawks. What do you guys think about this Packers team?
I think they've probably been watching our videos here. Is what I think. This Packers team, I actually don't think they did anything really crazy in the draft. So when I saw that, the first thing I went to look at was the other teams in the division. I don't think the other teams really did anything in the draft that warrants such a move. I just think it was probably a bad opener. I really do. I think that really explains that number there, because we all looked at it and we thought double-digit wins for the Packers is money in the bank. Now 11, you kind of have to think twice about it, right?
Yeah, I think that was a bad opener. I also kind of, a lot of people were kind of down on their, or overlooking their draft. But look, most of their roster spots were set. You know what I mean? And what they did what it appears that they did in the draft was try to shore up their special teams. We know that special teams in general is something that tends to get overlooked. It's probably the most overlooked facet of the game, at least when it comes to handicapping. And if a team like the Packers starts to have an elite special teams, then you're really going to see a team that starts to get multiple wins and covers even as a big favorite and stuff like that. So I don't think the draft was that bad. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. But if they turn their special teams unit into an elite unit, look out.
Yeah, their biggest, I think, issue this year will be just weathering, I think, the storm and just staying healthy. Because if all of that happens, this team's going to get a bye in the first round of the NFC playoffs. I mean, I just can't see. Even now, even though they're at 11 wins, you're right. You kind of stop and question of whether or not you'll you want to take the over on that. I think you're probably looking at 11 wins as kind of a benchmark for them this year. So even though it's at plus 130, I think I agree with you that I don't know if I'd actually jump on that still. But I mean, looking at their schedule and like you said, Pete, their draft, they didn't go out and do anything flashy, but they didn't really go out and do anything bad either. It's kind of was like the story, I think, of this draft. We were expecting a lot of craziness overall, and it kind of turned out to be a little lackluster. But yeah, I mean, still, if you came to me right now and you said I'm really high on the Packers over 11, I don't know if I could talk you out of it. I just don't know if I would, be really behind you with it either. I think
that's 11 plus 130, so that's not 11 50%. That's 11 at 43%. So
Yeah, it's still a pretty good value. And if the value, if we go up to plus 135, plus 140, I think I'd be jumping back on the Packers bandwagon here. But then again, I mean, this could easily be a 12, 13-win football team too here, depending on what their division does and how well they play their division. So I think the Packers still have some upside there.
All right, guys, so let me just ask you in general then, who do you think was the biggest loser in terms of the draft, and will it affect the odds?
Okay, I'm not necessarily going to say that the biggest loser. The first team that jumps out at me is the Bills. Maybe could have improved a little bit more. They still need a quarterback, and we've seen what they did with past years when they had an awesome defense and a quarterback, and we saw what happened there. A lot of teams improved. This was a deep draft. A lot of teams improved. Bills maybe not that much, and they still don't have a quarterback. So that's the first team that comes to mind as a team that had a disappointing draft. I don't know if I absolutely label it as the worst, but
took the words out of my mouth.
Really? That's what you're going to say?
Yeah, I agree with you completely.
Wow.
I think it really dulled the momentum.
I'm improving as an analyst. Look at this. What's the point of your eyes?
You've always been good, Pete.
Unless he's just bullshitting me. Tell me what I want to hear. All right, go ahead.
That'd be funny if I was punking you. No, I agree with you. I think the Bills, they dulled the momentum of their good offseason. I think of all the teams that needed a quarterback, I mean, they didn't get anybody. And you start to take a look at, because you have to look at this now 2 years, in a 2-year window, because the Bills traded first-round pick for Sammy Watkins. That trade is looking even worse and worse because they could have just waited. They didn't have to trade up. They could have had Mike Evans, Odell Beckham Jr., whoever, but they take Sammy Watkins. It cost them a first-rounder this year. That's one thing. So I think the quarterback's an issue. Offensive line, too, I don't think they did a whole lot for that. And then lastly, don't forget that they also traded Kiko Alonso. I was expecting that they might get a replacement for him. I know they have, I think his name's Preston Brown. He played pretty well last year, but still, I see that guy as, replacement level player. They didn't really do much to replace him either. If I'm not mistaken, they lost a safety as well. I don't think they replaced that. I'm not really sure what the Bills were doing here with their draft, but it doesn't look like they plugged a lot of holes.
And then the other team that's certainly in contention, I think, is the Chargers, right? They only had 5 picks. A lot of teams were able to enrich themselves with this deep draft, and the Chargers didn't do much, right?
Like Melvin Gordon?
I'm just saying, like, relative to how much the other teams improved in spots, I don't know. You think that there was some other team that improved less than the Chargers?
I was disappointed with the Carolina Panthers. That would be my other team, the Bills and the Panthers. I mean, the Panthers drafting a linebacker in the first round. They're just trying to see how little help they can give Cam Newton let's see how far we can go and just hang Cam Newton out to dry. He desperately needs offensive linemen, cornerbacks, wide receivers, and they go out and get a linebacker. Well,
and this was a draft that was chock full of cornerbacks. I don't understand why they wouldn't pick up one. That was crazy to me. And also, I wanted to bring up, too, the 49ers. I think, they did terrible in this draft. They lost both of their starting cornerbacks. Speaking of cornerbacks, they didn't pick up a single one. They have the worst schedule in the entire NFL, and somehow this total is at 7.5. I definitely see that as an under. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think the Panthers are a team that I had listed as one of the losers for this draft. I agree. It seems like they were kind of trying to go, be smarter than the average bear and go best player available, and it didn't really work out for them. And I'm not quite sure about Carolina. I think another team that you guys mentioned with the 49ers, absolutely. But let's be honest here. We're talking long term. You can't really tell who lost or won a draft for at least a year or two. So let's just preview 2 years down the road. If Jameis Winston is a complete bust, the Bucs are the all-time loser of this draft, bar none. So let's not forget about that. If Jameis Winston goes out and commits a felony, which I mean, if we're handicapping NFL draft picks on how highly they're likely to commit a felony in the next year, so Jameis Winston is the chalk in that battle. So if that happens somehow to the Bucs, they're the biggest loser in this draft by far. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm not holding out hope that Jameis Winston, even on or off the field, could potentially turn the Bucs into the biggest loser for this draft.
Yeah, I'll address the Niners question for a second. Definitely. The question is where's the offense going to come from? And they had a strong defense and they bolstered it. So if they have a serviceable offense, let's say, where's that going to come from? Then 7.5 juice to the under is kind of a low total. But if they really have a problem on offense, which is entirely possible, then yeah, I think you're completely right. And I definitely expect definitely looking at unders in general in Niners games, although for sure the totals should be low. But
it was a bizarre draft by the 49ers. They draft Eric Armstead. I think he's one of those guys that looks great in the combine, but very little production for his athleticism. They drafted a running back in the 4th round. Jesus, I mean, they have Carlos Hyde. They signed Reggie Bush. I mean, how many running backs does this team need? I guess Reggie Bush is always hurt, so maybe that's the reason. But still, this is a team with so many holes. Blake Bell as a 4th round pick, the Belldozer from Oklahoma, the converted quarterback. I know he's a project. This is a team that needs help right now. They don't need to be waiting 2-3 years down the road. So I did not like the 49ers draft. I think the other one, I'm actually curious to know what you guys think of this, because we were talking about the Falcons, the Panthers. What about the Saints? Because it seems like very polar. They addressed the offensive line in the 1st round, linebacker in the 2nd and 3rd round, and then in the 2nd and 3rd pick was linebackers. Quarterback is there in the 3rd round. I'm not really sure what they were doing there. A lot of picks for the defense, which is good, but I still think that this team needed some help at wide receiver. They didn't get much. Only the one offensive lineman after losing a couple this offseason. I'm just not sure what this team is doing right now.
Well, I think that they were trying. I mean, they had so many psychological issues last year in the locker room and all that. That I think that was kind of like their focus for this year. And if they can fix those, I mean, their total right now is 9. You choose to the under, so 9 plus 120. It's a little bit high, but I wouldn't say they're my first choice to bet on the under. That's for sure. Although 9's a little bit up there, I'll admit that. But I'm not as down on the Saints as other people might be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Pete. I think that number is just a little bit too high. They didn't do anything dramatic enough in the draft for me to have any real faith in them. So I think they end up. Do you think they will be the lowest at the end of the season in the division?
No.
No, yeah, no. I think it makes the Falcons, like we were talking about earlier, look that much better, though. I mean, here we go, back to your Falcons, Megan.
That's what I love to hear, guys. That's what I love to hear. All right, so actually, I want to revert back to Jordan. You were talking about Jameis Winston. I want to talk about this Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota thing we got going on. We got 2 excellent quarterbacks that went out in the draft. Actually, Dave brought up a seriously crazy stat that I didn't even know about. He brought it up earlier and said there were only 7 quarterbacks that went through this draft. And that's what you said, Dave, the least in the entire history of the NFL draft?
I believe so. That's courtesy of ESPN Stats and Info on Twitter. So I can't take credit for that, but we can check out their Twitter account to.
Well, speaking of ESPN Stats and Info, also of the previous 20 quarterbacks taken first overall, 6 won a Super Bowl, 12 made it to multiple Pro Bowls. Do you guys think that's in the future for Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota? Who do you guys like out of the 2?
I actually want to ask a different question, not to hijack your question or conversation, but I think that's like way down the road. Looking right off the bat, the first thing I was thinking of, Tennessee goes to Tampa Bay week 1, Cleveland week 2, Indianapolis at home week 3. How soon do you think Mariota is starting? Does he start week 1? Because they got
I think they already said he's going to start week 1.
He's starting week 1?
Yeah, I think Wisenhunt already said that. I thought I read that Wisenhunt came out after the draft and said he's going to start week 1. I can double check on that, but I'm pretty sure he's already stated that publicly.
Because I was just thinking it might make more sense because they've got 3 home games after the bye to start him week 5. So skip the 2 road games, skip the Colts at home, start week 5. But anyways, in terms of Super Bowls, I think it's way too early to see. I actually think.
Well, the reason I bring up that stat, Dave, is because we've got both these teams sitting at the exact same line. If I read that correctly, I think they're both at 5.5 or 6. Do you guys see it right there? Anyways,
yeah.
The Titans, I was telling Jordan this too, the Titans went off the board completely for a while, so I feel like the odds makers might be thinking that Marcus Mariota is going to perform a little bit better than Jameis Winston in this season. What do you guys think? Will both of these teams go under the total, over the total? What do you guys think about this one?
It's tough. It's kind of in that range where it makes it difficult. It's not 4.5. It's not Oakland range, right? So you gotta 6 wins is I think a lot for the Titans in the first year. I think of the 2, Tampa Bay might be more likely to go over. Easy division. I think Winston may be a little bit more pro-ready, and he also steps into a pretty good situation. Let's face it. He's not going to the Browns. He's not going to some of these other lackluster teams, even Jacksonville. The Bucs have Vincent Jackson. They have Safarian Jenkins, Mike Evans, and a decent running game. I mean, if Winston is at all anything worth his salt as a number 1 pick overall, 6 wins is not crazy for the Bucs.
It also, I mean, I was going to say, I would never even start to wonder about, those kinds of a first-year quarterback results because, you learn so much with first and second games, and so much depends on the system, the coach, how much everything is gelling, and, you just really there's no way you can look at how those guys played in college and figure out how well the system's going to function in the NHL, in the NFL that they're a part of. So it's the kind of thing where it's very much wait and see, and then, after a first game or two, get a much better sense of how things are playing.
But can we differentiate, I'm just curious to get your opinion, can we differentiate these quarterbacks from, let's say Andrew Luck was coming into this situation? Would you be a believer a little bit more in the Bucs?
Not even, I would, there's certain, you might be able to guess that certain quarterbacks are more or less likely to fit in with certain systems or with certain coaches' preferences, but I would still, and also the other thing is that there's a ton of inconsistency with with first-year quarterbacks. So I love to, like, you know, if they have a great game, you know, bet against them the next game, or if they have a terrible game, bet on them the next game. There's a ton of inconsistency and overreactions to short-term results, and I think we're definitely going to see that with both of them. And as far as, you know, the season win totals, yeah, who knows? It's when you have a quarterback that's, like, you know, you have an established system, an established team with a bunch of players and an established coach and everything. It's a lot easier to forecast, you know, small value with these win totals that are up. When it comes to teams that are, you know, going to be led by high-profile, super talented rookie quarterbacks like that, it's much more of a game-by-game thing, you know.
I think I'll answer Megan's question. Sure. I think you're both right in that. I think Winston will have the earlier success. I think he's a little bit more pro-ready. He's got definitely the better arm, and he goes into a situation where he's got two really, really, really good receivers and a pretty solid running game as well. So all the pieces are there for Winston to have success here early in the season. But long term, I think Mariota is actually going to turn into a pretty good quarterback. I don't know how long it's going to take. It may take a year, 2, 3 years before he's actually, you know, putting up big numbers. But, you know, I think we talked a little bit about this in our schedule release preview. But Mariota has the tools to kind of be what we all thought Colin Kaepernick was going to be. So I think that, you know, he has the ability to get there. The problem is he doesn't have really any offense right now in Tennessee, and that's going to be his biggest downfall here earlier in the year. So I guess when we go to season win totals, I guess you're right. I'll go with Dave that probably the Bucs are going to go over. 6 for me is a little high. I don't think I would touch it, but I guess I can't really talk you out of it. The Titans, though, I'd definitely probably go under at this point, just because even though they're in the easier of the divisions, I think, they'll probably struggle just because they don't really have an offense to surround Mariota with yet.
Okay, well, on the topic of criminals, let's talk about Shane Ray.
Oh,
he went to the Denver Broncos, as everyone knows. And
Perfect
I don't know. I feel like they put their entire draft on this player. He just got busted for possession. He's dealing with an injury. I feel like this was just a really stupid pick. My opinion. What do you guys think about this, though, for the Broncos?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Broncos draft in general is a little bit iffy. They could wind up having one of the worst drafts overall, especially in year one. All 4 of their top picks have injury concerns. I've seen mostly people giving them sort of like B's and C's, but I think that's the iffiest draft of them all, or the one that could fall, where the grade that people in retrospect, the grade that could fall the most.
Well, what's interesting, too, is their line's at 10 wins total, and the favorite's going for the over at minus 130. Do you guys think that they'll pull off 10 or they'll pull off 11 wins?
I honestly don't think the draft has virtually any impact on their regular season win total. I think, if you're looking at the Broncos, if Peyton Manning is Peyton Manning, then 10 is basically a joke. If Peyton Manning is the guy that we saw down the stretch of last season, then they're going to have a really tough time getting to 10 wins. I mean, that to me is the story of the Broncos season.
Yeah, the Broncos, I mean, at least Shane Ray doesn't have to worry about getting busted for possession in Denver. So that at least they have that going for them. But I think Shane Ray as a talent's pretty good. I mean, but you're right. It all really, I don't think it comes down to the draft. It comes down to the Peyton Manning and that neck. And what we get from him, obviously all throughout the year. So not to echo what Dave said, but I think I just did echo what Dave said. So.
Yeah, no, the NFL is a tough league. I don't know. I think I'd lean under 10 at plus 110. Mm-hmm. And the draft certainly, what Dave said is true, but the draft didn't help.
The division's still good. So, yeah, they have to worry about that at least.
Okay, well then, not to keep switching so quickly, we've got a lot to cover. I really want to make sure we cover everything. So speaking of the Broncos, the Oakland Raiders, they just hired the defensive coordinator from the Broncos. That was Jack Del Rio. And you guys were saying that the draft doesn't really affect wins totals, but here's a team where I think we will see the draft affect wins totals. What do you guys think about this? They had a really great draft. They added a lot of really great players. They got dynamite on pass catching with Amari Cooper. They've got Clive Walford. What do you guys think about this Oakland team? I think you guys said they were on the rise in our last video.
Well, yeah. I do believe that. I mean, on the rise for Oakland standards here. Let's do great here, but this is a team that's been living in the basement on like P4. They're maybe up to P2 or P1, maybe pushing the mezzanine here, and you're getting them at 5.5. Are they on Tennessee's level? Are they on Tampa Bay's level? Washington? I think they're a little bit better than Tennessee or Tampa Bay. So I think you might be getting a little bit of value with the Raiders. I just like Jack Del Rio as a guy who's going to come in and clean up the mess. I just don't think you're going to have this calamitous football team kind of like you'd see on The Simpsons, like fumbling and stumbling and all this stuff. I think this team's going to be decent. They'll probably find a way to run the ball, play defense, look like the Jacksonville Jaguars that Del Rio coached, try to cut down the penalties, try to cut down the off-field transgressions. And the draft, to me, is just, you know, a continuing sort of echoing of that. Solid picks. They needed a receiver. They got Amari Cooper. They needed help on the defensive line. They got Edwards, another tight end, guard help, linebacker help. I think it was just solid. So that's why I kind of do like the over 5.5 with the Raiders.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm higher on the Raiders now than I was a few weeks ago. Definitely, Amari Cooper is a great addition. You know, Derek Carr has a lot of potential. We've seen him great in flashes, but you know, in order for them to have a good year, it's going to have to put it together. You know, for mostly the whole game every week, which maybe he'll be able to do, but it'll be a test. And you know, the coaching and the mentality means so much when it comes to you know, professional level sports like this. And I agree with Dave. I think that Jack Del Rio might be the thing that changes everything. And if it does, for sure the Raiders are going to have betting value or line value, at least for a while, until the market catches up. I mean, if they start significantly getting better, it'll take at least a decent amount of time for the market to start, you know, inflating their line. So
Pete, I think, hit it right there, man. I think I'm a little weary of their betting total right now. I think I still project them around the 5-win mark, but still, I think you guys nailed it. The two most important guys for the Oakland Raiders this year, Jack Del Rio and Amari Cooper. Jack Del Rio is going to shape that defense up a little bit better. Amari Cooper, if he can come in and have a Kelvin Benjamin-esque rookie year, that's going to go a long way with Derek Carr this year. And on top of that, you know, I mean, I think Pete is absolutely right. Even though I'm not quite sold on their season win totals, they're going to have a lot of against the spread value here this season because people are going to look at them like, oh, it's the Oakland Raiders. They're 10-point underdogs. Time to fade them. And they're going to end up covering some games this year that you don't expect them to cover. So I think there's where you're going to find your value with the Raiders this year, a team that is very, very undervalued, probably even early in the season.
Yeah, and I would look for not necessarily when they're 10-point underdogs against elite teams, but more like when they're like, you know, 3-4-point underdogs against decent teams, and you're thinking like, wow, this is a decent team. They're only getting 3 or 4 points. Those are the kinds of games where I think the Raiders can go.
Let me throw this at you right now. Raiders are at home week 1. They're a 3.5-point underdog, home dog to the Cincinnati Bengals. What's your play?
I would, as of right now, I would lean Raiders for sure.
Yeah, I'd say take the points and maybe a little something extra on the money line for that matter.
Interesting.
All right, guys, so then let's talk about the Miami Dolphins, too, because as I told you in our schedule release, I'm getting a little bit excited about this team. They've made some really big changes. They've invested a lot of money on Sue, and now they've got an excellent draft pick as well with their wide receiver, Devontae Parker. Do you guys think this total went up one point? It's up at, what, 9 now? Yeah, 9.
Yeah. I think 9's too much for this team. There's no way in hell I'm betting a Joe Philbin team. And Joe Philbin and Tannehill, they're like a step below Belichick and Brady, right?
I was going to say, is Tannehill still the quarterback? He is, right?
What's that?
Is Tannehill's still the quarterback, right?
Yeah, I call him Tanna Trash. But,
I mean, look, he'll have some good games, he'll have some great halves, but 9 is hell of a lot of NFL wins, man.
It is, yeah. I'm looking forward to him throwing ground balls to Devontae Parker. But the Dolphins, I do think I'll tell you this. This is how I view the Dolphins. I think over is a great bet with this Miami team. I think it's changed completely. I think this team has lots of receivers now for Ryan Tannetrash. They got Greg Jennings, Kenny Stills, Jordan Cameron, Devontae Parker. Lamar Miller should be able to run the ball, and they picked up Jay Ajayi, who, you know, as long as his bone-on-bone knee problem doesn't get in the way, he should help the running game. And I think the defense is actually a pretty big weakness for this team. Yeah, they got Sue, but the defense doesn't have a whole lot outside of that. So I do like the Dolphins overs. That's what my conclusion here with this team.
Oh, okay. So overs.
Overs, yes, right.
Oh, okay. That's what I was going to say. I was going to say I agree with that, but that I wouldn't bet them on the. Okay. Yes, I agree.
totals. Week 1 against the Redskins, I like over 44.5.
Right. I completely agree with that.
I think where I agree with you guys and where I disagree with you is I think you can't trust the Philbin and the Tannehill, but I agree their draft. I think among a lot of teams that we talked about that the draft really doesn't affect their season win totals. I actually think that the Dolphins and it actually is legitimate because obviously we really like Parker as a talent. I'm not quite sure of why they went after a speedster when we already have seen that that Tannehill can't get the ball to Mike Wallace down the field. So I don't quite know how that's going to work out for him. But I really like Jordan Phillips to go along with Sue Man on this defensive line. He develops into the talent that people think he's going to be nasty 1-2 combo there in the middle of that defensive line for the Dolphins. But 9 probably too high for a season win total here for me in that division, which is definitely improved from last year. If you're basing it on last year, yeah, sure, 9 looks good, but this year, much improved division, and obviously you still have the Super Bowl champs there, if I'm not mistaken.
I just think I agree with you, but I mean, don't forget they lost Odrick, right? Odrick was a pretty quality defensive lineman, so to me that's a lateral move at best. I do like the player too, but you're expecting him to come in and play as good as Odrick. I don't know that that's going to happen. I just think you look at their secondary, some real issues there. They didn't address anything. Even linebacker, don't forget, not that Donnell Ellerby's that good, but it's not like they got anybody else. They basically put all their money in Ndamukong Suh, and he can't really play all positions on defense at once.
I think that your concerns about the secondary are definitely legitimate. But with Phillips, they're going to have to double team Sue a lot, and it's going to leave some lanes open for those guys on the ends and Phillips. So I think that's kind of where I'm more basing on my upside for Phillips this year than anything, just because he has a guy that's going to get double teamed a lot next to him. But yeah, I think you're right. Dave, you were really astute there with betting the overs. I think with this team, it's something I didn't really think about. But yeah, with the fact that their secondary may be absolute garbage this year, and that offense may be a lot improved, you're right, dude. It may be a very, very good value to bet the overs on them early in the season for the books catch up.
All right, and let's just go ahead and stick to the AFC East here and talk about the reigning champs, the Patriots. What do you guys think about this line here? What do you think? What are your thoughts about the draft overall? How did these guys do?
Patriots.
I mean, the Patriots did what they do every year, which is they have sort of like they do it their own way, and they never make the big splashes that has everyone talking like other teams do. But what they do works year in and year out, and they got a good nose tackle, and certainly on paper, it's understandable why everyone says they just had like a mediocre, non-spectacular draft. It's probably true, but they get it done year after year, and this year, no reason to think it's going to be any different, I think
they kind of had a missed opportunity here. It was like we already talked about previously. This was a draft class full of cornerbacks, and they waited until, the 7th round to pick up one? Sure. I felt like that was kind of crazy because they just lost 2 of their cornerbacks. I believe I read that somewhere. Darrell Revis is leaving, and Brandon Browner. Browner was leaving as well, yep. I don't know. I just feel like they missed a really big opportunity here.
Certainly you could say that, but again, it's like, I'm sure they were thinking about it. You know what I mean? I'm sure they didn't miss the cornerback position when they were looking at this game. Every year, the Patriots never have a draft where people are like, oh my God, the Patriots are going to be awesome. Look at their draft this year. They always have a draft like this each year, and their program and their system works. And so until we have reason to doubt it, I don't question it.
All right, so 10.5 win total, over or under, guys?
Well, that's a tough one. That's one I'd probably stay away from.
Okay.
I think it's tricky. If anybody else has a different opinion, feel free to hop in. I think I'd rather stay away. Just a comment on the draft. I agree with Pete. The Patriots do things their way, and to be honest, it usually works out. But the only thing that I gathered from the Patriots draft, focus on defense, which was their first 4 picks, and focus on guys to protect Tom Brady, which was their next 2 picks. So that's really what was their main focus from what I saw.
All right, guys. So then moving on here, we'll talk about the Seahawks. How about these guys? We touched on it just a little bit, but they're at 11, over or under in that number. The under's at -150. Wow.
I would definitely go under with the Seahawks. They're a team that I think that with that division looking like it is this year, probably the best division in all of football. You have the Rams. We're all very high on. I think we're all very high on the Cardinals this year. Even though we're not that high on the 49ers, they're at least going to be a 6-win, maybe 6-7-win football team this year. So they're at least going to give them a game in that rivalry. So 11 wins with their schedule and the fact that they play the what other divisions do they play? They got to play the AFC North too. I mean, that's just nasty. I got to go under here, even with the chalk. I think 11 wins is wishful thinking. I think also I didn't chime in on the Patriots. I think 10.5 is maybe a little high for them. I'd say both those teams probably 10-win football teams this year.
AFC North and also the NFC North.
Yeah, so even worse. Yeah.
Packers, Lions. I don't know. Seattle. I think Seattle could have a rough start to the year too, which probably pushes me under. At St. Louis won't be an easy game in Week 1. At Green Bay is likely a loss in Week 2. So I think that could be tough. And then they also go to Cincinnati in Week 5. Pretty much Seattle on the road anywhere is not a guarantee. That could be 3 losses right there. So you're looking at maybe their other 2 games there, home to Chicago, home to Detroit. Probably, I don't know, maybe 2-3, 3-2 after 5 games. If you need to get over 11 wins, that starts to get dicey. In terms of their draft, I think that you have to factor in Jimmy Graham. I think the only reason I give the Seahawks such a high grade is because no first-round pick is going to be as good as Jimmy Graham. You pray to the 7 gods that your first-round pick is going to be as good as Jimmy Graham. So I think Seattle definitely did a good job there. But other than that, I can't bet the over with Seattle here.
All right, guys, so just to finish it off, we're getting pretty close to time here, but we've covered a lot, but we've also missed a lot. What are some of the really big plays you guys want to throw out first looking at after the draft? Who's going to be a really great value to look at here?
I'll start. I think we might see overs, or at least team total overs, with the Ravens. I think that the Ravens had good weapons on offense, and of course they have Flacco anchoring it all. And I don't like to bet on teams that have good offenses with a marquee quarterback like Winston or Mariota. But I love teams that have an experienced quarterback who knows what he's doing, and they add at skill positions dynamic young players, and that's what the Ravens did. So, I don't know how their defense will hold up, but I definitely look at overs with the Ravens and team total overs with the Ravens, at least for the first half of the year.
All right, what do you guys think, Baltimore Ravens?
Yeah, I do like the Ravens in general. They always come out with good drafts. I mean, it's been proven under John Harbaugh that they're going to be competitive every year. I just think that division is tough.
I'm not talking about winning games. I'm talking about overs and team total overs with the Ravens.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you meant because it's over 9 wins.
Yeah, no. Just overs and team total overs.
Yeah, I think their defense has proven to be a bit of a question mark, especially at home. That offense seems to play much better. I would agree with that.
I think the Ravens, they're a team that Dave hit. They always draft well. They're a team that I've always, you never look at their draft and like, oh, they lost this draft. I don't think the Ravens have ever lost a draft. They always at least draft solidly. So I think their defense may be a little better than you guys are projecting. But yeah, I think if the sportsbooks are undervaluing those totals, then yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure what the Week 1 lines are or anything like that. I was going to say, I thought we were talking about season win totals. I think the Jaguars are a team you have to absolutely look at as an over potential for their season win totals. A lot of chalk at minus 170, 5.5 wins though. But I mean, this team has been improving every year. If they can get it done on offense, their defense is at the point to where I would trust it enough to stop a lot of teams. So I think the Jaguars over 5.5 wins could potentially be a really good value. I also really like their draft this year too. So.
Plus 2 wins probably from the Titans, or maybe a split with the Titans. They could probably beat the Texans at least once.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. There's 3 right there. So, I mean, all you got to do is win 3 more games. I think that's very possible for Jacksonville.
I've actually got a lot. I don't know where to start and end, but Cardinals, I like Cardinals over 8.5. I think 8.5 is low, plus 130, good value. Falcons over 8. Bills under 8.5. I think Panthers under 8.5 is on the low. That's a really good bet. I don't think we've talked about that enough. But to me, the Panthers were a team last year that took advantage of everybody struggling in the division. If Atlanta and New Orleans doesn't have a meltdown and Tampa Bay isn't a complete piece of trash, then I don't think the Panthers are doing much. They didn't even get over 8.5 last year. I don't think they've done anything in the offseason to really get much better. So I like that. And I'll throw this one out because I think we got to talk about this team. We haven't talked about them at all. Eagles under 9.5. I want to know what you guys thought about this Eagles draft, because remember, we heard all sorts of nonsense. They're going to get Mariota. They're going to trade their veterans. You know, they might. Who knows what the hell they're going to do? They might get flipped on, upside down. They end up just kind of standing pat throughout the whole draft. I'll tell you why I like the under. I think this team is sort of a big shit mix now. Chip Kelly ends up with players that he didn't really want to end up with. I don't think he really wanted DeMarco Murray. I don't think he really wanted Ryan Matthews. He's got Sam Bradford as his quarterback now. Whatever, I don't care what he says. I don't think anybody really wanted Sam Bradford to be their quarterback. Not even CFL teams wanted Sam Bradford to be their quarterback this year. And then beyond that, you got the Eagles, who are a veteran team, and Chip Kelly, this know-it-all coach. I think he could potentially lose this team. He tried to trade Fletcher Cox, didn't do it. Tried to trade Michael Kendricks. Pissed off LaShawn McCoy. You heard his sentiment as to how he felt as a veteran and playing under Chip Kelly. And you look at the schedule: at Atlanta, home to Dallas, at the Jets, at Washington. I mean, if they blow the Washington game, blow the Jets game, I don't think those will be easy by any stretch. But this team, they start off 1-3. I think Chip Kelly is one guy who could potentially lose the locker room. I hate Chip Kelly. I think this team is a mess. And not only will I be betting on the under logically, it's an emotional thing for me now. I would really like to see them fail.
All right, and one, too, that we haven't really touched on that I wanted to talk about a little bit was the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, even though he tested positive for marijuana at the Combine, I really think Randy Gregory is a steal here in this draft. Their line's at 9.5, though, and I'm not sure they're going to get 10 wins this season. I mean, their preseason looks pretty nice, but then they've got to hit teams like New England Patriots. They've got the Seattle Seahawks. Miami Dolphins might be a problem. The Redskins, the Packers. Redskins again. Do you guys think they'll be able to pull off 10 wins this season?
That offensive line is good, but yeah, I don't think 10 wins is. I mean, I know I made a pretty bold prediction on them to go to the NFC title this year. I'm not going to walk back on that just yet, but I do think that. I mean, it's interesting with this team because you know that their offensive line's good. You know that Tony Romo is going to do things. But if it all comes down to whether or not their defense is going to play like it did last year. If that's the case, 10 wins, yeah, sure, why not? Especially at the value you're getting at, like plus 120 or something like that, I think. Or yeah, so I mean, yeah, 10 wins is a pretty good bet for this team. But that defense doesn't show up. They're not going to have Greg Hardy for the first 10 games. This is a team that is one of the bigger wild cards, I actually think, in the entire 32 teams. What do you guys think of that? Do you think they have probably a pretty low floor and a pretty high ceiling? I think is how I look at the Dallas Cowboys this year. You really
I would
don't
agree with that. I would agree with that completely. Yeah, I think that number of 9.5 juice to the under is pretty accurate. And like you said, it's a little bit hard to get a read on it. Probably game by game, they might have betting value one way or another, but I agree with Jordan. Inconsistency is what I would expect. Higher than normal inconsistency.
I think this is a bad team, to be honest. I think that one of the things that got overlooked with the Cowboys is that they didn't draft a running back, and they're going into the season with Darren McFadden as their lead runner, and I think that to me is a big concern because remember, the Cowboys, why that defense was so good last year was because DeMarco Murray was able to pound the ball. They were able to control the ball and keep their defense on the sidelines. Well, now you got Run DMC, and unfortunately for him and the underwear thief Joseph Randall, those guys are severe downgrades. And if they can't run the ball, even though they have a great offensive line, if they can't run the ball, everything goes downhill from there. And I was disappointed that they didn't get anybody in any round who at least has some upside. If Darren McFadden is what he looked like in Oakland last year, my word, help the Cowboys.
I hear you, but in general, if you're top notch in the trenches in the NFL, you're going to have at least an 800 season, and that was their strength last year, and if that happens again, I wouldn't feel too comfortable betting on an under. But I hear you, all good points though for sure.
All right, guys, any final comments? We didn't touch on everybody, but of course we will be covering this all up until the season. Lines are going to be changing. I'm sure we'll be back all together for another Google Hangout before the big kickoff in September. So, guys, do you have any final comments, anything we didn't mention?
Houston Texans had a great draft, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah, I might be looking at least to, again, 8.5. That's kind of that's a lot of wins, but I definitely look for the Texans to probably more likely than not, let's say, cover at least 5 out of their first 8 spreads, let's say.
And what about the Washington Redskins, too? Wow, we haven't even touched on that. They had a really good draft, I thought. Scott McCloughan, it was his first draft with this team, and he picked up some great players. He picked up Brandon Scherf, who I think is the best offensive lineman in the draft. Do you guys think that they'll be able to go over 6 wins this season?
Another big wild card, but yeah, I would lean towards the over on them.
It's a big question. They like you said, they really beefed it up in the trenches, and it depends on how much dividends that pays. If it pays full dividends, then yeah, they're going to be a lot better than expected. But if those young guys have trouble adjusting to the NFL speed or gelling, which is entirely possible, in fact, usually does happen, then it might take a year or half a year or so. But yeah. It all depends on the dividends they get from their beefed up trenches in the draft for sure.
I would like to see the Redskins succeed. I just don't think it will happen. I just think the environment on that team is pretty bad right now. This is a team that lost 7 of their last 8 games, and I'm not entirely sure what to make of the whole Robert Griffin III situation and Jay Gruden. It looks like they don't want him there. Just like Subway booted RG3 out of their commercials. I don't think the Redskins want him there. And now you got this bizarre situation where the coach doesn't want to play him, but the owner's forcing him to play him. And I just don't know if that's conducive to winning. And they got to get to 7 wins there.
Yeah, excellent point.
Cross-sport promotion, guys. Chris Paul's not playing tonight. Craziness is about to ensue.
Oh my God, you're kidding me.
Oh, just tweeted out. Chris Paul's out tonight. So, all you NBA bettors out there, watch this line go crazy. Already up to 7.5. It's gone from 6 to 7.5 in the last 30 seconds.
So Jordan's probably just needs to leave the call.
Guys,
so he can go watch some NBA.
The Bulls are playing right now. I gotta go. I'm sorry. I'm checking out the NFL. It's May. It's hoop season, guys. I'm sorry.
All right, guys. Well, we'll let you all go then. On that note, Jordan, you can say goodbye first if you want.
Bye, everybody. I'm out.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it for all of you who joined in. Let us know what you think about the draft. Any questions you've got for us, any kind of plays that you want to see or predictions you want to see from us up towards the season, let us know. Comment below this video. Hit us up on Twitter at SBR Sports Picks. We give out picks daily on Twitter. And thanks for joining us, guys. Jordan already peaced out, so I guess we can call this goodbye.
Hey, guys.
See ya.
All right, guys. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Right.
Yeah.